Like, so if there were people now, like, I don't know if you want to make this specific to like women in a new industry or embarking on something new or in general, but like, what would you have advice for people that decide like, I don't want to stay in my home country. I do want to travel, but I also want to have an income. Like, if you're speaking to people like that right now, what sort of feedback would you give them?
I think it's about being honest about where your skills are. Like, it's probably not like my experience was that I tried to do something completely new while I was also leaving my home country, figuring out how to live on the road, making an entirely new social circle. To try and establish a completely new career at that point was probably not wise. If I had stuck with writing, I probably could have gotten a lot more stability a lot more quickly. I already knew how to write, I had the
Okay.
degree, I had the experience, knew how to sell stuff that I'd written. I really discounted my own experience at that point. And so I would say, like, is there a way that you can take your existing skills with you, to just keep doing what you already know how to do? Like, don't try and reinvent the wheel while you're also upending, everything else in your life, is probably from,
Right.
a practical sort of piece of advice. But I think also, like, the worst that can happen, like, figure out what the worst is, like, what is absolute rock bottom for you, like,
Mhm.
and what can you do about that if it does happen? Because I think so much fear and anxiety comes from worrying about all of the things that could go wrong. um, Most of them are not going to happen, but if you know what the absolute worst is, it kind of takes the fear out of it. If you've already looked at that thing and said, that's a thing that could happen,
Right.
and if that happens, then here's what I'm going to do.
Huh.
It just kind of gives your brain permission to switch off the worry. It just lets you be like, yep, that's a condition that I've thought about, and now I can just kind of get on with stuff.
Right.
There's a lot of risk and uncertainty in kind of taking that leap. It's absolutely worth it, but it took me several years to kind of get a really consistent, like, well structured business up and running. I kind of was very much feeling around in the dark for the first couple of years. And, I think that taught me a lot. And I think you can't be afraid of not having it all planned out. Like, there's going to be so much stuff that's unpredictable. So you
Right.
really do have to just be like, willing to say yes, willing to throw yourself in. And if it doesn't work, then go one step back and do what was previously working. But yeah, I think it's just about being willing to be uncomfortable and trusting yourself to be able to figure stuff out on the fly.
Right. Trusting yourself, I think, is a really big one, as well as being kind to yourself. Like, I don't tend to
Yeah.
keep a lot of journals, even though I journal a lot. They're mostly like, what are they called? The art of the writing pages, or whatever they're called.
Artist's way.
Yeah, I'll do like 2 or 3 pages in the morning many days, just to like dump out the hurricane in the morning, and then I'm free to kind of operate more efficiently. I remember during those times of starting a new business, or like really embarking on something that I knew that I did not have this skill set, but like I really had this baseless confidence from anywhere, from somewhere, that I could figure it out. But it was fraught with all sorts of things. Like, I always thought I was going to go bankrupt, the business was going to fail. And so, like, to get all these fears and anxiety out of my head, like, if I had these pages, they would probably be like, just, they'd probably fill this apartment. Like, because I was writing all the time to get like, well, but what about this? And if I make this amount a day and I take on this client and I do this, then like, so it also helped me strategize through the screaming and noise in my head at that time, so I could make good decisions. And it wasn't really just like based on fear. I could really separate the wheat from the chaff. Is that right? All right. It's the first
Mm-hmm.
time I said that out loud. And to really help me navigate that time. And I really want to go back to your earlier point about having that safety net, because I was just thinking of when I was starting to move from working in like a corporate environment. I was a sales director for quite a large conference company, and I really, really hated it. And I remember I really just quit. I was so miserable. There was a commute involved, and it was just like, I remember being at home and thinking like, okay, in 5 years, if I'm like the person I respect the most in this office, would I be happy? And the answer was no. Like, it was my boss at the time, who I really loved, and like, you know, we're still in contact and I respect him a lot, but I just didn't want that life and that job and all of these things. But when I quit, my parents thankfully were still working at the time. So I would just get up every morning and I would take all sorts of digital marketing courses. I took an HTML class at night. I was reading all these magazines about, you know, entrepreneurship and all these things, just to get all these new ideas into my head. Like, I come from a pretty, you know, middle class, blue collar family. I have but one friend that was an entrepreneur at that time, and luckily he was buying me books as well. Like, I owe that guy a lot. Um, but without my parents' ability to be like, you know, rent free, live at home, do whatever you want during the day, I don't think I would have been able to make that shift, because I wouldn't have been able to find all of these new ideas. Like, sure, I put in a Herculean effort of work during that time, but like, without the ability to just like read and think and absorb and all of that time, which took me like probably the better part of 2 years, there's absolutely no way that I would have been able to build the life that I now really value. So yeah, I just wanted to put another cherry on your point that a lot of people I think undervalue the ability to have some safety net.